Complete Bay Area news coverage starts right now. This is the 10 o'clock news on KTVU Channel 2.
Good evening, I'm Ken Wayne.
And I'm Heather Holmes. Never in the history of the Oakland Police Department has there been a day like today. 5 Oakland police officers were shot this afternoon, and tonight 3 of them have died, and a 4th is in grave condition at Highland Hospital. The 5th officer was grazed by a bullet but not seriously injured. It all began when 2 motorcycle officers pulled over a Buick in East Oakland at about 1:15 this afternoon. Police say the driver opened fire and both officers were shot. One of those officers died. 2 hours later, 2 more officers were shot, both killed after a SWAT team located the gunman at an apartment building just a few blocks away. That's where the 5th officer was grazed. The SWAT officers killed the gunman. The first shootings occurred during a traffic stop at 74th Avenue and MacArthur Boulevard, just a few blocks from OPD's Eastmont substation. The other shootings occurred at 74th Avenue and Hillside Street. We have live team coverage for you tonight. Our David Stevenson is at Highland Hospital where the officers were taken. But we begin with KTVU's Mike Meback. He's at Oakland Police Headquarters where police and city officials just released late details. Mike?
Well, Heather, a very deep feeling of shock and sadness tonight here at police headquarters in downtown. 3 of their own are dead, another fighting for his life, and tonight flags are at half-staff on what is certainly one of the most tragic days in the history of this police department.
In these moments that words are extraordinarily inadequate, we come together in shock, in grief, in sadness and sorrow at a set of tragic incidences that had caused the death of several of our police officers.
Investigators say 2 Oakland police motorcycle officers were shot, one of them killed after the 2 made a traffic stop at 73rd and MacArthur at 1:08 in the afternoon.
I first want to offer my condolences to the officers that lost their lives today in the line of duty in our city.
A massive manhunt was immediately launched, and within 2 hours, a tip led police to the gunman who had barricaded himself inside an apartment building just a block away from the initial shooting. Oakland SWAT moved in. There was an exchange of gunfire. The gunman was killed, but so too were 2 more Oakland police officers.
When officers arrived on the scene, they discovered 2 officers suffering from apparent gunshot wounds, and they were quickly transported to Highland Hospital. While investigating the incident, the Oakland Police Department received information on the location of the suspect.
The last time an Oakland police officer was killed was in 2004, and now the department will mourn again, not for 1, not for 2, but for 3 of their finest dressed in blue.
When officers gained entry into the apartment, they were immediately fired upon by the suspect with an assault weapon. 2 officers sustained fatal gunshot wounds, and a 3rd officer received a minor wound, a graze wound to his head.
Our hearts go out to the families that at this very moment are experiencing a level of tragedy and loss beyond our ability to comprehend nor to express in words.
Police say the man who killed the officers is 27-year-old Lovelle Mixon. The Oakland resident had a no-bail warrant out on him. They say he was on parole for an assault with a deadly weapon. Acting Chief Jordan said the 2nd motor officer who was shot is in grave condition tonight. All 3 officers who were killed were sergeants. Live tonight here in Oakland, Mike Meback, KTVU Channel 2 News.
And Oakland police tonight identified the officers who were shot today. They are 40-year-old Sergeant Mark Dunnigan. He had been on the force since 1991. 43-year-old Sergeant Irvin Romans. He had been an Oakland police officer since 1996. 35-year-old Sergeant Dan Sakai, who had been on the force for 9 years. All 3 of those men died today. 41-year-old Officer John Heggie is hospitalized tonight in grave condition. Police did not name the 5th officer, who they say was grazed and less seriously injured.
Dozens of officers gathered at Highland Hospital in Oakland after the shooting, waiting for word on the conditions of the officers, hoping for the best, but fearing the worst. KTVU's David Stevenson has been there since shortly after the officers were rushed to the emergency room and joins us with a live report. David?
Ken, that's right. Oakland's Highland Hospital was the site of desperate efforts to save those officers' lives on what will certainly go down as one of the worst days in this department's history.
It was pretty intense.
Sergeant Mark Dunnigan and Officer John Hagee were taken to Highland Hospital shortly after they were shot 5 miles away on MacArthur Boulevard. A crowd of their fellow officers rushed ahead to clear the way to the emergency room.
They were stressed out and hyper. And
Todd Thomas lives across the street from the emergency room entrance and says he witnessed the attempts to save the wounded officers.
I saw 2, but the first one was definitely more severe, and they were stressed out on that one. And the people from inside the hospital were outside waiting for him, and when they got there, they pretty much started pumping on his heart right away, it looked like.
SWAT Officer Dan Sakai and SWAT Sergeant Irvin Romans were brought here shortly after 3 p.m. By then, police had shut down this block of East 31st Street at Stewart Avenue to traffic, as more than a dozen police vehicles crowded around the hospital, and law enforcement officers, friends, and family gathered to await the news.
Everyone is shocked and saddened by this situation.
Hospital spokespersons described the mood inside as somber, but said medical teams quickly shifted into emergency mode.
We're very well equipped to respond to this. We do trauma and mass casualty quite frequently, so we had no problem handling the event.
Handling this multiple emergency meant making room inside the trauma center for family members and fellow officers.
We have accommodated everybody to the best of our abilities to provide family care for everybody.
Initially, hospital personnel indicated all the officers had been brought here in critical condition. As the afternoon wore on, the tears and hugs told a sadder story. A police chaplain led the crowd in prayer and said he hopes the city will unite behind its police department.
This is just a tough time for the department, and I would just invite everyone to keep the department in their prayers.
Again, at this hour, 41-year-old Oakland police officer John Hagee remains in grave condition at Highland Hospital. No word yet from hospital officials when they may update his condition. Reporting live in Oakland, David Stevenson, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
The East Oakland neighborhood where the shootings happened has been an active crime scene all day and well into the evening, with officers and technicians going over the area, collecting evidence. KTVU's Ken Pritchett was covering the first shooting scene when the second gun battle erupted a few hundred yards away. He joins us with a live report and dramatic video of police reacting to that shooting. Ken?
Well, Ken, for now, the crime scene tape has been dropped here at 73rd Avenue and MacArthur Boulevard. The original scene, the very first shooting scene, was 1 block away at 74th Avenue and MacArthur. And as you said, we were on scene when police moved in on the suspect when the 3 of the 5 officers were hit by gunfire.
Yeah, big perimeter. Let's go all the way to Bancroft and all the way to MacArthur, 73rd, all the way to 79th.
Oakland police closed off several city blocks around the scene of the first shooting, located at 74th Avenue and MacArthur Boulevard. This is where the motorcycle officers had been shot after a traffic stop, which occurred just after 1 p.m.
I just heard some loud shots, like boom, 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 you know, and I'm like, you know, what is that? I knew it was gunshots because it did not sound like firecrackers.
3829, suspect is a matte black, 5'8", 150 pounds, all black clothing, light skin, wide-rimmed glasses.
The suspect fled and the search began inside the cordoned-off area, a search which lasted for about 2 hours. And then at 3:15, police started to run with guns drawn, sweeping past a family on the sidewalk as officers moved into position around an apartment building 1 block from the original shooting scene. A tip led officers to the building where the suspect had barricaded himself inside. As SWAT officers moved on the suspect, 2 more Oakland officers were shot. Moments later, the SWAT armored car with at least 1 of the injured officers inside emerged from the crime scene and stopped. Paramedics from Oakland Fire jumped inside the armored car, which then raced to Highland Hospital. For another 15 minutes, officers continued to surround the apartment with guns drawn until word was received that the suspect had been shot dead. It was only then the horror of this day could be seen on the faces of those officers on scene.
These guys take a pretty high-risk chance coming out here to protect us, you know, and look how we do them. Look what happened.
In the distance, you can see the flashing light of a tow truck that moved in here about 20 minutes ago, presumably here to tow away the suspect's vehicle, which has been at the intersection of 74th Avenue and MacArthur Boulevard all day. We talked to some of the sheriff's deputies here. MacArthur Boulevard is shut down, and they say that it likely will be shut down all night as this investigation goes on. In Oakland, Ken Pritchett, KTVU, Channel 2 News.
Governor Schwarzenegger today called it a tragic day for law enforcement officers everywhere. He issued a statement offering his and his wife's condolences to the families of the fallen and injured officers. Governor Schwarzenegger said, quote, "Our thoughts and prayers are with the families of those lost, the Oakland Police Department, and law enforcement officers throughout California during this difficult time." Today's officer shootings fall among the most tragic days ever for California law enforcement. The greatest loss of life occurred on July 19th, back in 1898. 5 Alameda County Sheriff's deputies were killed when a murder suspect barricaded himself in a barrel of explosives, and the barrel detonated. On April 6th, 1970, 4 California Highway Patrol officers were killed in a 4.5-minute shootout with 2 men after a traffic stop in the Los Angeles County town of Newhall. And then there was today. 5 Oakland police officers shot. 3 are dead. 1 is fighting for his life. We have complete coverage of the Oakland police shootings on our website, KTVU.com. Just click on the Bay Area News tab at the top. We will also have another live update in our next half hour.
In other news tonight.